This town council meeting to order of April 2nd, 2024. You'll please stand and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You'll continue standing for the invocation and welcome Pastor Glenn Neff from that church, Hilton Chapel.
Join me all in your own way and belief as we pray and open this meeting. Almighty God, merciful God, we thank you for the blessings that are ours here on Hilton Head and across our land. This past week, we reminded us of your blessings of love for us here on Hilton Head and for all mankind around the world as we joined in the celebration of the miracle of Easter. We humbly honor you as we open this town meeting today. We thank you for the dedication and commitment of Mayor Perry and our council members, true servants of the people, Father, and our community. We are all partners in this task of making our town a better place to live, both for the present and in the future. So we ask, God, give us wisdom and enthusiasm while working together in a spirit of unity, and yes, even in love. For you have instructed us to love our neighbor as ourselves. As we seek to make plans, fulfill dreams, resolve issues, help us to do it so with your guidance, giving us the wisdom necessary to identify and focus upon truly important matters, the strength of discernment, the courage to pursue new challenges, the confidence and compassion to make difficult and correct choices, the humility for honesty and constructive candor. For all these, we pray today in your name. Thank you for caring for each one of us here today. Amen.
Thank you. Mr. Orlando, do you have any changes to today's agenda?
No, sir.
Okay. With that, is there a motion to approve the agenda as is?
Move to adopt the agenda as submitted.
All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. So moved, I believe. Ms. Becker, I didn't see your hand go up.
Yes, sir.
Okay, 6-0. Okay, presentations and recognitions, report of the town manager.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, members of the public. Just one quick update today. We, through Kim Gammon, our town clerk, we began moving our agenda notifications over from one delivery system to Civic Plus in October. And we've been communicating that we are making this slow transition since that time. We've introduced to the public to look and feel of our agendas that we're trying to improve the way they look and feel. We're also trying to streamline and improve efficiencies internally. So we know, and I agree, that it's been a temporary inconvenience. Our current system, we have about 2,700 that have signed up, and to date, we only have about 390 folks sign up. So the agendas will continue. I think it's important that I provide some clarity on this. The agendas will continue to be online as they always have been and will always be published to social media. But if you want to continue to receive an email about our meetings, about the agendas, you have to sign up through this Civic Plus system. Kim can help. That link has been out several times via social media, via media releases, and it's available on the homepage of our website. There's also a flyer in the back with a QR code on it, so you can grab it, print it out, communicate it any way you can help us spread that word. So I just want to tell you I appreciate your patience with this, but we are making that conversion to Civic Plus. So great job to Kim, and please sign up to our new system. I do think people will sign up when they stop receiving agendas. Please look on our webpage or contact the town clerk for more information.
Okay.
And that's all.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Earth Day proclamation. So I will ask. Gene Frew. From the Outside Foundation. Come on up. Town of Hilton Head Island proclamation. Whereas on April 22nd, 1970, the first Earth Day was observed. The celebration honored the environmental movement and raised awareness of environmental issues that affect future generations. And whereas 2024 marks the 54th anniversary of the Earth Day celebration with the theme of Planet versus Plastics. And whereas the global community faces significant environmental challenges with plastic pollution, climate change, and natural resource loss. And whereas all people, regardless of race, gender, income, or geography, have a moral right to a healthy, sustainable environment. And whereas it is understood that the citizens of the local community must take action to create positive environmental change to combat these challenges on a global scale. And whereas a substantial environment can be achieved on an individual level through consumer behavior changes to reduce the need for plastics, participating in local environmental education opportunities, and proactive community involvement. And now therefore, I, Alan R. Perry, Mayor of the Town of Hilton Head Island, hereby proclaim the 22nd day of April 2024 as Earth Day in the Town of Hilton Head Island, and urge all citizens to celebrate Earth Day by supporting environmental initiatives within the Town of Hilton Head Island and encouraging others to undertake similar action. In testimony whereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause this seal of the Town of Hilton Head Island to be affixed the 2nd day of April in the year of our Lord, 2024. Thank you. Next, I'm going to have Mr. Ames come up and read. He is Chair Emeritus for the Hopeful Horizons, and this is for Child Abuse Prevention Week month.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate this opportunity and the honor to be able to do this. I invite Dr. Joe Kuhn and also Chris Wilbert to join me up here, please. Chris is with CAPA, the Child Abuse Prevention Association, and Dr. Kuhn is with Hopeful Horizons. Whereas South Carolina's future prosperity is dependent on nurturing the healthy development of 1.1 million children currently residing in diverse communities across the state. And all children deserve to have a safe, stable, and nurturing homes and communities they need to foster their healthy growth and development. And whereas child abuse is a public health issue with serious societal consequences, as data shows the link between the abuse of neglected children and a wide range of costly medical, emotional, psychological, and behavioral problems into adulthood. And whereas preventing child abuse and neglect must be a priority that requires individuals, families, youth-serving organizations, faith-based groups, businesses, government agencies, and everyone that makes up our communities to support the physical, emotional, and educational development of all our children and their families. And whereas effective child abuse prevention exists in communities that provide parents with the social support, knowledge, and parenting and child development and concrete resources they need to cope with the stress and nurture their children, which help to ensure that all children can grow to their full potential. Now, therefore, I, Alan Perry, Mayor of Town of Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, in conjunction with Hopeful Horizons, Child Abuse Prevention Association, CAPA, and support services programs across the state, designate the month of April as Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month, whilst urging all citizens to dedicate themselves to protect quality of life for every child. In testimony whereof, I hereto set my hand and cause the seal of the Town of Hilton Head Island to be affixed on this 2nd day of April in the year of our Lord, 2024. Congratulations and thank you very much.
Want to hold this?
Well done.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks again.
All right, now we'll move on to general reports from town council. I would like to start off with one, if I might. So back in 1983, when the town was formed, there was one gentleman that joined town council, Henry C. Dreesen, and he sat on town council for 10 years. He passed away the other day, and he was 96 years old. Gave a lot to this community and also sold the Dreesen Park to the town of Hilton Head Island for a beach park. So a great man, a great family, and a great legacy for what he and his family have provided to this community. So I just want to make notice of that. So with that being said, any other general reports from council? Ms. Becker.
It's more of a request. As we are aware that on the next agenda coming in May, there's a discussion about municipal consent. And as that's such an incredible topic, and it will be coming up for an important discussion, I think that I would like to request, please, that we move the 278 corridor meetings up from 3 o'clock or 1 o'clock, whenever they're being held, to minimally 5 o'clock or 5:30. And the reason I'm asking is so that those folks who are working, those folks in the Stony neighborhood, the entire Island community, can be here without missing their jobs and losing money, so that they can make sure that their voices are heard in public and on the record. So if we can make that adjustment for the next meetings, I would appreciate that.
We'll work with the town manager on that, see what we can do.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Any other general reports? Okay, seeing none. Oh, Mr. Brown.
Yeah. I had the pleasure this week of visiting Hilton Head Island High School. Two classes. One, the travel and tourism class. The other was intro to hospitality. I miss those kids, by the way. You don't really realize how stepping away from coaching sort of loses the pulse of the students very quickly, not being with them all the time. I was, I guess, surprised and alarmed as I asked each one of the classes, with about 24 students in each one, this question: how many of you, after you have finished your educational career, whatever that is, high school, tech school, 4-year college, plan to come back to Hilton Head to live? In the first class, not one hand went up. In the second class, about 3 maids. One said he'd like to retire, by the way. It was very eye-opening and alarming to me. So I just ask us as a community, ask us as policymakers, to be very mindful of the environment or the attitude that we may be offering to the next generation. I think we owe it to them to be able to listen and learn from them as well, so that we are setting course to have those replacements for leadership and so on in our community. I think there's a gap there. It was right for me. I felt as if I need to share that with you all.
Thank you. Just one more time, any other general comments? Okay. Mr. Stanford, do you have a report on LATS?
No report, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Becker, Low Country Council of Governments.
The report.
Thank you. Mr. Ames, Beaufort County Airports.
I do have a brief one regarding the airport. The new terminal is under construction with foundations being poured at this time. And also the new Heritage Golf Tournament flags provided by the town are now proudly flying at the entrance to the airport. The airport invites everybody to go up and check it out.
All right. Thank you. We will be scheduling another report from John Rimbold from the airport with additional information on the airport progress. Mr. Stanford, you want me to do Soloco for you?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. So, Low Country Regional Board, we had a meeting, and we invited Dominion, Palmetto Electric, and Beaufort Jasper Water Sewer Authorities to come in and give updates on their capital projects and what is happening off island and how they're addressing growth. It was really interesting. In Christmas Eve and 22, I think it was, there was a cold snap that came through, and had it not been Christmas Eve, we would have been without power. So there's a big challenge. In North Carolina, they had to do some allocations of power and cut it off in certain areas. But had it been a true business day, we would have been faced with the lack of power. So there's a lot of work that's going into understanding the infrastructure and how it is meeting or not meeting our needs. The supply chain with they said that the power station that sits out in front of your house, that little box, used to run about $1,000. Now it runs about $3,000 and takes up to 3 years to receive. So there's a lot of issues with the growth prospect and how they're going to move things forward. Dominion Energy, they came in and talked about the support of everything else within the community, within the Low Country of power, and how they're supporting that. And then Jasper Water Sewer, they talked about their CIP project and the staff that they're bringing in to address a $750 million project and how they're trying to make things happen. And these are projects that are going to take years and years. So Soloco is made up of local mayors and administrators from the different municipalities and the county, but just so that we have an understanding of what growth is going on in the Low Country was the purpose of that meeting. So, Mr. Brown, Island Recreation. Ms. Becker, Community Services and Public Safety.
Since our last meeting, we have chosen three, I believe two for tonight, candidates to recommend to the full council in executive session.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Ames, Public Planning.
Thank you, Mayor. The Public Planning Committee met on March 14th and approved a resolution supporting the town's conditions and trends assessment. And I'll also add that the Public Planning will not be meeting in April. Thank you.
Thank you. On to appearance by citizens. I'd like, oh, did I miss that?
No report, sir.
Sure. I don't know about that. Sorry about that. Appearance by citizens is up next. I'd like to remind our citizens that Section 2-5-70 of the Town's Code limits each person to 3 minutes when addressing Town Council. At the end of the 3 minutes, you're asked to conclude your comments. Please maintain a decorum suitable for the meeting and refrain from using any profane, abusive, or obscene language. If you have any materials you'd like to give to the Town Council, please give them to the Town Clerk after you're finished speaking. Ms. Gammon, do we have anybody signed up today?
We do. Skip Hoagland.
All right. Mr. Hoagland.
Skip Hoagland, Windmill Harbor. A small, motivated group on Hilton Head will pool money and file a very strategic lawsuit called the Hilton Head Illegal Tax Issue and Use Lawsuit and seek our legal fees after winning, even seek damages to taxpayers. Also, I believe this will result in criminal charges for tax theft and fraud. Mayor Perry and others have already been caught lying, committing fraud about having seen the Chamber's financials and illegal use of tens of millions. Also, lawyers Coltrane, Gruber, Alford, and Finger and Bluffton also caught drafting a fraudulent 5-year, multi-million-dollar DMO Chamber contract and overcharging legal fees as reported by the Island Packet. If you can prevail locally, we can win every city in the state and 1,700 other cities in the United States who are committing the same exact crimes and fraud as this Hilton Head Council and our Chamber CVB DMO. We will include all the illegal tax funding we have identified, not just the Chamber, but workforce housing, 600,000 dredging of Harbortown, you already been sued for that, sponsorship of the Heritage, and many other nonprofits, as well as state and federal laws being violated by each and every one of you. I will ask the court for legal rulings. If the judges locally commit malfeasance and rule against the rule of law with their friends like Judge Dukes and Mullins, we will simply appeal to higher courts and the Supreme Court if needed. We have discovered the largest nonprofit tax scam and fraud and tax evasion in 300-year history of the U.S., committed by 1,700 chambers and town councils just like you folks. Mick Fleming, the president of the ACC, American Chamber of Commerce Executives, was contacted by Bill Miles, and it seems Mr. Fleming's sent to 3,000 chambers about me. Isn't that odd? 3,000 chambers about me. Why me? A chamber in the Southeast has reported that a publisher in their market is complaining to the IRS about the chamber's significant visitor publication advertising activities. Essentially, this individual is blowing the whistle, not only on the chamber, but on dozens of chambers and CVBs nationwide. This incident should serve as a reminder to all chambers to be sure reporting of your unrelated business income, called UBIT, is accurate and complete. More than one form may be required with timely payment of your appropriate federal and state taxes. The penalties and PR impact for improper reporting are substantial for all chambers and nonprofits. Talk to your auditor or your accountant, but don't assume they understand all the aspects or your counsels understand any of this as it relates to the unrelated business income UBIT. Discuss your various kinds of non-income dues and ask about how they may be treated by the IRS and tax offices. You folks have got to wake up. You got to start abiding by the law. You can't just pick and choose the ones you want to abide by.
Thank you, Mr. Hoagland. Kim, other signed up?
Yolanda Cohen McKinney.
Yolanda Cohen McKinney, and thank you all for serving in the public offices that you do. We appreciate it, and I just felt it was important to be here. I had other plans, but I just decided to stay here and attend this meeting. But once again, I just want to express the grave concern regarding the Gullah Geechee community and the loss of land, the potential loss of culture. Well, we have lost culture due to the loss of land and gentrification over the years. And we need the town to really step up and do more to help and to prevent the loss of our culture. We're now 5.77% of the population here on the island. And so we have been crying out, been speaking out, advocating against the expansion of Highway 278. And it just seems as if our voices are not being heard, and which is disheartening, because this is our home, is our roots, and just the idea that things are moving forward and the voices of the people are not being heard. I brought up during the last meeting that the citizens, the Native Islanders of Stoney were not given an option to say no to the expansion. And I'm not sure if that has been addressed. I have not heard any feedback from the town of Hilton Head, but it needs to be addressed. We appreciate the work that the CDC is doing and Mr. Boxley. However, we want more than mitigations. We want the option to say no to the encroachment in our community, and it's been going on for years. You know, it seems like I'm saying the same thing over and over. And but we will continue to advocate. We will continue to make our voices heard. We will continue to speak up until something happens. So the expansion of 278 will destroy the Gullah Geechee community, and the expansion of Hilton Head Airport will destroy portions of the Gullah Geechee community. So when is enough enough? We don't want to lose our culture. We've lost enough. So we're hoping and we're inviting the town of Hilton Head to stand beside us and fight for our culture. Don't fight against us. It should be a collaborative relationship and not a fight. Too many of us have been fighting over the years, so people are tired, they're giving in, they're giving up, and a lot of people are just stressed out, and many have died fighting. So we ask for your help in continuing to keep our culture alive.
Thank you, Ms. McKinney. Is there anybody else signed up?
Daldan Lee.
Okay.
Sherry Mikret.
Do not see her.
Lucas Michalowski.
Hello, my name is Lucas Michalowski. I live at 155 Fish Hall Road here in Hilton Head. I'm here to discuss fires. We have regulations for lights, noise, discharge of firearms, signage, even line of sight buffers to preserve the island aesthetic. We currently allow small fires 3 feet in diameter, flames 2 feet high. We do not regulate the frequency, hours of burning combustible materials, or volume of pollutants the combustion creates. 5 of the last 6 days, my neighbor who lives in Palmetto Hall, my family does not, has started a fire at 5 p.m. or so, and it continues to burn and smolder past midnight. One occasional fire every few weeks is one thing. 2 or more nights in a row is unhealthy to endure. Once I asked him to please not have a fire that particular night, his response was, I should not be asking someone of a different community to do anything, and it is none of my business. Then asked if my house was sealed up, further stating he paid $11,000 for this fire pit to be built and wants to enjoy it as often as possible. We paid quite a bit for our home and screened in porch with French doors, which we wish to enjoy, have our windows open and such. As a result, we close our windows, spend money to run the HVAC, and the smoke still gets in the home through various vent stacks and exhaust vents settling on our carpets and furniture. We reached out to our primary health care office. Their nurse practitioner responded stating someone with asthma already has restricted breathing and that smoke can cause severe airflow obstruction, which can be fatal. I have asthma. The microscopic particles enter one's eyes and respiratory system. Besides irritants, including headaches, bonfire smoke causes worsening lung and heart conditions and increases your skin sensitivity to UV radiation from the sun, leading to sunburn and higher risk of skin cancer, that film or residue that sits on your skin after being near a bonfire. My profession is energy management. All throughout the county, I program fresh outside air intake systems to bring clean air into large buildings and see the importance and lengths that the county and state go to bring such air into buildings. UV lights, filters, dedicated systems, dehumidification processes, and more. I was considering retaining an attorney to file an injunction, but I'm asking my community leaders to intervene for our family and our neighbors' health. Our area is now more densely populated, and consideration for the effects of burning combustibles need to be included in the town's regulations. The fire department's burn line, when you call, says, please respect the rights and desires of your neighbors. Our right to breathe and our desire to enjoy fresh air is not respected night after night. Thank you all. I just want to start talking about combustibles.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Ms. Gaiman, anybody
John
else signed up?
Casey.
Pardon?
John Casey.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, John Casey, Indigo Run. I have a few comments on the latest draft of the MOU between the CCDC and the town. And I think they point out to a certain extent that this continues to be a hasty process that is somewhat ill-drafted with a lot of pitfalls. One continues to be the preferential rental provision, which allows a one-to-one preferential rental versus a public access rental. It's been pointed out several times that this at least could be a real problem with the 501c3 status of the CCDC. And yet to date, I've seen no effort either by the CCDC or from the town, and I can be corrected if I stand corrected if I'm wrong, to actually conduct a legal analysis to determine whether this is a problem or not, and to let the public know. And I don't think this should proceed without knowing the answer to that question. You know, all it's going to take is a challenge from one homeowners association, and it's well known, because you've heard them here, that many of these homeowners associations are very much against this endeavor to make the whole house of cards fail, and to proceed without knowing the answer to that question just seems folly to me. The indemnification provision, necessary but relatively worthless. If there's a large liability, this entity is not going to have the resources to indemnify the town. Bad drafting, the clawback provisions. They, again, you wonder whether it would ever be exercised, but the provision ends with the statement, we, even though that both the town and the CCDC are defined terms under that agreement. It begins with, "We request 10 years." Who's we? I'm presuming it's the town, but if I had done that kind of drafting and presented it as a final draft, I'd be having a very uncomfortable conversation with my senior partner. That's just sloppy, and it shows this isn't ready. The thing that really scares me, and I hope I have time, is the idea that the town may take control of this project. Oh joy, we now have a public housing project. How wonderful. And then what happens with the various secured creditors and the lien holders? They haven't agreed, as far as I can tell, to make their rights second to the town's. And now the town is going to step in, probably require a new department with new paid public employees, because the first and foremost purpose of a bureaucracy is to preserve its existence and expand. And now we de facto have a public housing department. And I wish I had time to go further. Thank you.
Mr. Casey.
Lynn Greeley.
Good afternoon, I'm Lynn Greeley. I live in Moss Creek, and I would like to give my 3 minutes to Skip Hoagland, and I hope you will do the constitutional thing and also the law, and because you have not been doing that. Thank you.
We will not, council will not recognize the yielding of time.
Mr. Perry, the only way we can fairly present a proper rebuttal to the Chamber's 15-minute fraudulent presentations is that we fully explain in our own 9 to 15-minute presentations why this town must stop this illegal tax funding to the Chamber, and also why hiring a new DMO is mandatory, which should be a local media, the newspaper, or best choice, a local ad agency. In this presentation, we will spill out facts and evidence and the laws that the council is violating, as well as the chamber, which should just operate as a local business league representing its members, plumbers, electricians, beauty salons, etc., not be in any business whatsoever normally carried on by a for-profit. Just support the members who are. And we'll explain why an tax-funded DM job should be done by an ad agency, not a locally legal chamber that develops our tax-funded website in Canada, HiltonHeadIsland.org, and not locally. And worse, profits from our tax monies by selling advertising in complete violation of 501-C6 non-profit tax codes. And Mr. Perry, we will also fully explain your lies and your fraud, saying you saw the chamber accounting with Bill Miles. You need to be removed from that bench, from that seat. This includes tax hospitality funds used for bonds by Burr Foreman Chamber lawyers, also representing Bill Miles, SCPRT funds, general tax funding, and $20 million issued by Governor McMaster for COVID relief to 5 chambers, and Bill Miles got $1.5 million, and it's disappeared. We don't even know where it is. tax funds are not on the agenda today, nor is the chamber. However, in the past, you have given chamber 15 minutes for their annual dog and pony show about how council should continue hiring the chamber as a DMO so they can continue stealing millions of our tax monies with no oversight or scrutiny of any kind. Therefore, I plan to present 9 minutes and maybe 15 minutes of opposing view on this illegal council's conduct and the chamber funding operations with people like Mrs. Greeley who are going to assign me their 3 minutes. My presentation will focus on this corruption with the 3 citizens give me their comments to speak as a group, and Judge Vaux has already ruled this is totally legal. And also I want to present the IRS and the American Chamber of Commerce executives. This article in the packet that says Supreme Court officials can be sued for blocking critics, and the illegal magazine by the chamber.
Thank you, Mr. Hoagland.
And I'm going to give this to Tamara Becker.
No, you will give it to the clerk. Mr. Sorry. Next, up on the agenda, we have the second and final reading of is there anybody else signed up to speak?
No.
Thank you. Up next on the agenda, we have the second and final reading, consideration of an ordinance to amend the town of Hilton Head Island's comprehensive plan to incorporate a housing impact analysis. This was approved on first reading, 6-1 on March 5th. Ms. Lewis, quick presentation. Thank you.
Yes, I can do the presentation. It's the same presentation as I've presented prior to. What's before you today is a request to amend our comprehensive plan to incorporate the housing impact analysis. This has been reviewed publicly over several months. They're identified here up on the screen. And this housing impact analysis was created to enable town council to utilize up to 15% of ATAX monies for qualified workforce housing. And this process was activated when the General Assembly passed Act 57 that allows the allowing accommodations tax to support qualified workforce housing development. This outlines the qualifications that are provided for this use to be met, and we have gone through the process to create this document. We have submitted it to the required agencies, the Department of Revenue and the Tourism Expenditure Review Committee, and this public body for your review and consideration. Overall, the requirements within the Act identified 5 major components that are to be included in a housing impact analysis, and they are provided for here. Those 5 topics include an employment analysis, a housing market analysis, a housing market conditions analysis, construction and development costs, and solving the housing crisis, which were included in the document. So if there are no questions about the housing impact analysis, that completes my presentation.
Okay, thank you. So before we bring it to council, we'll open up for public comment. Yes, ma'am.
Xiaodan Li worked for Council. Today, you will be voting on the implementation of Act 57 by adopting 2 ordinances. Unfortunately, the housing impact analysis in front of you reads more like a recycled housing needs report, not a dynamic analysis of potential negative impacts on working family communities such as Marshside and Woodlake. Therefore, we urge you to vote no to the housing impact analysis because it does not meet the reporting requirements stipulated by Act 57. We also urge you to vote no to the budget amendment because CCDC does not incorporate homeownership in its proposal, another violation of the spirit of Act 57. The $600,000 grant to CCDC would only secure rental units for 6 households or 24 heartbeats, a very expensive proposition that does nothing to address the root cause of affordable housing shortage. Furthermore, we object to the narrative that the town CCDC partnership serves public interests and benefits lower-income workers. The housing impact analysis highlights the need for food and hospitality workers catering to tourism. First, according to the chamber, visitors come to the island not for its culinary scene, but for its beaches, biking trails, and relaxed environment and golf. Second, the report pays little attention to the residents' need of essential workers such as nurses and first responders, who most likely prefer to own homes on the island. Perversely, CCDC would compete with them for affordable housing inventories. Third, if there is a shortage of servers, why do we see new restaurants popping up every day? Do the island residents really need 250 dining options on this little island? Last but not least, the 2019 Workforce Strategy Plan defined rental affordability for wage earners as between $575 to $1,250. Why doesn't the housing impact analysis indicate that almost half of CCDC proposed rents are between $2,000 and $2,800? And some of those units are charging above market rates even after free money from the government and being exempt from paying property taxes. How does it benefit lower income workers? It's a false notion that ATAX has to be spent within 2 years of receipt. Act 57 permits carry forward upon 2/3 affirmative vote by the council. The law will be sunset in 7 years. If the council are not judicious about how the money is spent, the state lawmakers could take the revenue pillar away from the town's housing framework. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes, sir.
Mine is real simple. Less government, more free enterprise. And this is going to be part of our lawsuit. You're going to be sued, and this is going to be one of the reasons. You're using our tax money. It's illegal, and it's going to be discovered, and it's going to be all put out. You need to stop it.
Thank you. Any, yes, ma'am.
Evening.
Good evening.
Okay. I'm Louise Miller Cohen, and I just want to thank the town council for all the work that you are doing, and thank you so very much for listening to us. And I just want to make a couple of comments about us Native Islanders here on Hilton Head Island. You know, I've been thinking about this for a long time, and mostly when you are living somewhere and things get bad, you can leave and go back home. But when I think about us here, Native Islanders, we're home. We can't leave to go anywhere because we are here. So we are stuck with whatever is brought our way. So coming up all through the years, I've been here now for 80 years, and I grew up in church. And there were times when things got hard, the only thing we could do was pray. So I'm asking all my Native Islanders not to forget the word of prayer. Thank you so very much for starting this meeting off with a prayer. So I want us to remember that we cannot stop. We can't get discouraged. Sometimes we do get tired. We take a break. But we got to stand back up and get back in the race. And as I remember Jehoshaphat's prayer back in 2 Chronicles, he prayed, "O our God, wilt thou not judge them? For we have no might against this great company that cometh against us, neither know we what to do, but our eyes are upon you." And of course, God answered him in verse 17, he said, you shall not need to fight in this battle. Set yourself, stand you still, and see the salvation of the Lord with you. O Judah and Jerusalem, fear not, nor be dismayed. Tomorrow, go ye out against them, for the Lord will be with you. So I just want our people to know that God is with us. He hears, and all we got to do is keep on calling on him. And even though I know the numbers seem to be dwindling, if God is with us, we don't need the crowd. We need him. So I just want us to remember that our God is with us. He didn't allow us to come to Hilton Head and allow our people to work for nothing, but he allowed us them to purchase land that we would be here. So we are here, and I think we're going to be here forever. So I just want my people to be encouraged. Thank you so very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Cohen. Any other public comments? All right. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Council. John Smarsley, Hilton Head Plantation. I decided to do a little work and review the bill that Senator Tom Davis passed. And it's a fascinating 9 pages. What's fascinating is this verse is in the bill at least 7 times. And it says, development of workforce housing, which must include programs to promote home ownership. It's in the bill 7 times, maybe 8. What I find fascinating is in our analysis that we're getting ready to approve, just pretty much going through the tick marks of what it requires. Section E says, the density, location, setback size, or height development of a lot, parcel, land division, or subdivision, and an analysis of relative impact of an ordinance on low and moderate income households. we only briefly say we're commenting that we're going to look into it. If we're going to pass something and present it to the state and it becomes an ordinance, I think we need to take a little more detailed look on this section because obviously they're looking for it. It's important, it's in the bill, and I just think that before we vote yes on this, I think you all need to consider that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Marsley. One last time, any other public comments? All right, seeing none, is there a motion from the
Mayor,
dais?
I can make a motion to approve an ordinance to amend the Town of Hilton Head Island's comprehensive plan to incorporate a housing impact analysis. This is a second and final reading.
Second.
Any discussion from council? Ms. Becker?
So I have consistently not accepted this housing impact analysis because it doesn't address the impact that any of the work that might come after Act 57 becomes part of our comprehensive plan and we're moving forward. The impact that it'll have on the residential communities that it is going to be undoubtedly placed into. That's a problem. This analysis should be looking at the overall community that it's going to impact. The words are in the description, and it does not do that. Moreover, the information contained in it many times are snapshots in time. They're not necessarily something that we can rely on as a consistent moving forward, and I don't believe because of that it should be embedded into our comprehensive plan. So there are two things. Thirdly, we have an interesting situation when Missy was putting up the data that needed to be included. What seems to me is obviously missing is a survey that indicates to us our current conditions that has been provided to the employers across the island to ask their employees where they want to live, how they want to live. Do we know what the time schedules are from the various shifts that they might be employed? We don't know any of those fundamental pieces of information that would lend far more credence to what a real issue is and how to address it. So it's incomplete. There are a number of things that have been mentioned, and I think that we have to be very, very careful to make sure that we have looked closely and in depth to the language of Act 57 and its actual intent, because this isn't the last place it stops, right? We approve it and then it goes on and it gets reviewed. And I certainly want to make sure that Hilton Head doesn't have egg on its face when that further review is done. The home ownership piece is clearly missing. Act 57 requires that whoever is taking part in receiving any ATAX funds has to provide meaningful home ownership opportunity and not just a cursory seminar on how to save your money and how to be fiscally wise. In fact, some of the suggestions about how that might take place that I've heard are quite insulting. Just because someone might need help doesn't mean they don't know how to take care of their money. So those are some basic reasons why this housing impacts analysis is not ready to be approved. It should be sent back for additional information to really be embedded into it so that we know and understand how it is that we are considering to spend ATAX money. And by the way, ATAX money that we do not necessarily have a faucet throwing cash dollars out at us. Those monies are coming from somewhere, and those monies are going to come from other organizations that we assist. It's going to come from our own town government that we use money for, our fire and rescue. And I think that we are doing damage, ultimately, to the town by taking any of those dollars off the table and directing them through any housing initiatives moving forward. So I will be obviously voting no, and I encourage the rest of you to think a little bit about what you've heard and to read carefully about what's been presented. Also vote no and send it back until it's a complete analysis and really ready for us to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, we do have a long meeting, so if we can refrain from that, that would be helpful. Any other comments from council? All right, so there is a motion on the table from Mr. Ames to approve the comprehensive plan to incorporate a housing action impact analysis. It was seconded by Ms. Bryson. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? That'd be 6-1. Consideration of a resolution to authorize, well, next up is Marcy Benson, Senior Grants Administrator, to present the consideration of a resolution to authorize submittal of the Community Development Block Grant Entitlement Program Annual Action Plan for program year 2024 to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. We have been having many discussions on this lately, so thank you for being here.
A mouthful. For the record, my name is Marcy Benson, Senior Grants Administrator, and at the March 12th Finance and Administrative Committee meeting, the committee unanimously voted to recommend approval authorizing the submittal of the CDBG Annual Action Plan for program year 2024 to HUD. Approval of this resolution by the full council will allow for the 2024 CDBG funding allocation to be used for the Patterson Park project. HUD has not yet issued program year 2024 CDB funding allocations. I check every day, I promise you. But in previous years, we've received approximately $200,000, and we anticipate for that amount to be similar for 2024. Public engagement was conducted, and the annual, or the 30-day public comment period was conducted. No comments were received. And I would be happy to answer any questions that council might have about this plan.
Okay, first we'll go to public comment. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
I'd be happy to make a motion. I will move to approve a resolution to authorize submittal of the Community Development Block Grant Entitlement Program Annual Action Plan for program year 2024 to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Second. Discussion by council. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of supporting the motion by Mr. Ames and seconded by Mr. Alfred for the CDBG Block Grant Entitlement Program Annual Action Plan for 2024, please signify by raising your right hand. That would be 7-0. Thank you. Marcy will continue with the consideration of a resolution to authorize submittal of the Community Development Block Grant Entitlement Program 2021 Annual Action Plan, substantial amendment to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Thank you. You may recall at your February meeting, this was an item on the agenda. This was an amendment for the 2024 Annual Action Plan to include land acquisition costs as an activity that can be funded by the 2024 allocation. That is the only change that we are proposing for this amendment to the plan. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Okay. First, I'll open it up to public comment. Yes, ma'am.
It's not a comment, it's a question. So what are we doing with HUD money for the park? I just want to understand what the implications and also what the HUD streams are attached. And if we have ATAX allocated to some projects, so why do we need HUD money instead of using the ATAX money? So I just want to understand what this is all about. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the dais. Do we have a motion?
Yes, I move to approve a resolution to authorize submittal of the Community Development Block Grant Entitlement Program 2021 Annual Action Plan Substantial Amendment to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Questions, discussion by council? Yes, ma'am.
So we heard a question from the residents who don't completely understand what this program is about. Would you please take a moment and fill us?
Sure. The town is a HUD Community Development Block Grant Entitlement Community, and that means that we receive funding yearly from HUD, directly from the HUD offices in Washington, D.C. We do not have to submit applications on a competitive basis. When the federal government approves the budget, then HUD gets their portion, they calculate how much the town would receive, and then they give us the notification. There are a variety of requirements in the program. Primarily, the funds must be used to benefit low and moderate income residents. And funds can be used for public improvement projects. They can also be used for public service types of projects. There is a long, very long list of eligible projects, but those are primarily the majority of the types of projects that get funded with CDBG money.
Marcy, aren't they exclusively restricted to certain census tracts?
Yes. When we use funds for doing projects such as public parks, that they must occur in census tracts that meet the low to moderate income eligibility requirement, which means that the census tract must be 51% or higher low to moderate income. Within the town, there are only 3 census tracts that meet that eligibility requirement.
Thank you very much.
And can you just fill us in? I think the question with regard to strings, that's one we all are worried about. Whenever we get free money, what is our requirement back? We're grateful when we can get money and there are no strings. Are there strings attached?
Yes, primarily administrative types of strings. There are public notice requirements we have to follow. There's low to moderate income requirements we have to follow. When it gets down to actually using the money for a project, there are procurement requirements that we would need to follow. So those are the types of requirements or restrictions that we are held to in this program.
Thank you.
And I think it's important, Marcy, if you just explain where we've traditionally used these funds, right? We've used them for parks and open spaces, including some easement or land acquisition. So I think that's a really important part of it, because when we spend it in that fashion, there are less or different strings, right? We're procuring concrete and not working on any type of long-term program through percussion, right?
Correct. In the past, every year except for 2020, which was the exception year, all of our CDBG funds have been used for what HUD would call public improvement projects. In the beginning, in 2015 and 2016, we funded dirt road paving projects, and we moved on to funding park projects. We did an expansion at the Sailing and Rowing Center. We put new playground equipment there, additional parking. Those are some of the projects that were funded with CDBG money. 2020 was a little bit different. As we all recall, it was COVID. HUD relaxed some of the requirements, and we were able to use 100% of our CDBG funding that year for public services that assisted citizens with recovery in response to COVID. So we were able to work with the Community Foundation of the Low Country through a grant program that allowed various public service organizations here on the island, for instance, the Boys and Girls Club, the Island Rec Center, some of the school district organizations, with providing assistance through the CDBG funds for programs that they were funding to assist with the response to COVID. But that was the exception to the rule with the public service funding.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Questions? All right, seeing none, we've got a motion by Mr. Ames, a seconded by Mr. Stanford to the submittal of the Community Development Block Grant Entitlement Program 2021 Annual Action Plan Substantial Amendment to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Is there, all those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand.
That would be 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next on the agenda, we have Josh Gruber to present first reading of an ordinance to amend the Town of Hilton Head Island budget for the fiscal year June 30th, 2024, to provide for the budget appropriations of the prior year budget roll forwards and certain other appropriations and commitments, and the expenditures of certain funds to allocate the sources of revenue for the said funds, and to provide for severability and an effective date.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council, Mr. Orlando. Good afternoon. We're here to discuss a proposed budget amendment. And as I think most of you are aware, budget amendments are a traditional part of the town's annual fiscal process. They serve a couple functions. One, a lot of times when we're building a budget, we're using projections. And so at a certain point in time in the year, we go from having projected numbers to having actual numbers. And so a budget amendment allows us to make those changes to reflect actual numbers rather than projections. It also allows us an opportunity to take into account actions that either the council has taken or actions that have arisen during the course of implementing the budget that affect it one way or the other. And so I want to walk you through what is being proposed today in terms of the budget amendment, the elements therein, and then answer any questions that you may have. So I want to start with looking at amendments to the general fund. The first one that we're looking at is moving funding forward from last year's adopted budget into this year's adopted budget, specifically for the purpose of implementing beach parking management services. Last year, council approved a contract with PCI to manage parking services for the town at a total cost of $869,730, with $366,965 of that coming towards operating expenses and a little over $500,000 towards capital expenses. A breakdown of that budget was included in your backup materials today if you have any questions about the specifics of it. In the fiscal year 2023 budget, there was $308,508 that was identified for beach parking management that remained unspent as part of that budget, and we are proposing to roll that money forward from last year's budget into this year's budget in that amount. The next item I want to cover is rolling forward similar fundings, but this time instead of beach parking, we're looking at the land management ordinance revisions and updates. Similarly, there was funding that was approved in last year's budget. We are proposing to move forward a total amount of $350,000 towards this year's fiscal year 2024 budget. And that would allow us to pay for approximately 1/2 of the total cost of this service. So the plan is to budget for it in this year through this budget amendment of $350,000. And then when you see next year's budget, you'll see a corresponding placeholder of $350,000 for a total contract price of around $700,000 for that work. Next, we're proposing an amendment to the state accommodations taxes under the FY24 affiliated agency program. This was a recommendation that came out of the Finance and Administrative Committee. Specifically, it recommends funding the Coastal Community Development Corporation in the amount of $600,000, and similarly, the Hilton Head Regional Habitat for Humanity in the amount of $500,000. A schedule showing the current availability of state accommodations tax funds that the town has on hand, which is, I think as we've discussed before, it's a little bit tricky in that you've got a calendar year-based grant program, but a fiscal year-based collection and reporting program. And so those figures represent half of cash on hand and half projections of revenues that are to be collected between now and the end of the current fiscal year. And so cumulatively, we're proposing an amendment to transfer $1.1 million from existing fund balance for state accommodations tax funds for these two purposes. Next, we're proposing an allocation of hospitality tax funds, and this is specifically in reference to the 2024 RBC Heritage Golf Tournament sponsorship agreement that Town Council recently approved. The difference between the money that was budgeted within the FY24 budget and the amount of the sponsorship agreement that was approved by Council is reflected in this budget amendment. And similarly, we're proposing to bring those funds forward from existing hospitality tax fund balance. Let me go ahead and pause right there before I get into land acquisitions, because I know we've covered a lot, but I want to make sure that I don't lose you in case you have any questions about any of those within the general fund, and then I'll move into the CIP program.
Mayor, can I make a motion to remove the two affiliated agency elements of this amendment to discuss separately?
Okay.
I would like to do that, please.
Is there a second? Being none, motion fails.
Okay, I'll keep moving forward. The capital improvement plan amendments, and again, those are a separate fund from our general fund. This really does reflect a lot of the estimates in terms of funding sources, and now we have actuals. Those go for project-based expenditures and also revenues that were associated with this. And so you'll see the first one that we want to talk about, this is for the land acquisition purchases that Town Council has authorized within the current fiscal year. And so there's a chart that shows the property that was acquired, the purchase price, and the source of funds that we are proposing to use for that purchase. And so if approved today, you would see the cumulative expense of $11,987,000 moved from those various source of funds into the CIP budget and reflected as a total expenditure within the CIP budget. Next, we have CIP carry forward. So these are funds that were budgeted within the various buckets of program in our CIP program that we are proposing to carry forward from the fiscal year 2023 budget that were unspent and will be brought forward into the fiscal year 2024 budget. And there's a breakdown of those. I'm going to exclude land acquisition because we just talked about that. But cumulatively, there'd be $286,000 for beach improvements, $607,000 for pathway improvements, $530,000 for road improvements, $363,000 for park improvements, and then $1,490,000 for facilities and equipment improvements. And again, let me pause there before I move on to the American Rescue Plan, because the American Rescue Plan is separate from our budget, but obviously because of its nature, we wanted to bring it forward as part of this discussion. So are there any questions on the amendments to the CIP plan based upon what has been presented?
Any questions?
Okay. So lastly, we want to talk about the American Rescue Plan, or the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA spending plan. As I think most of you recall, this was funding that we received from the federal government in response to COVID. The significant majority of this funding the town received to make up lost revenues that it might have otherwise received directly into its general fund. We brought forward a spending plan to Town Council that outlined various ways in which those funds would be used. With where we are now, we are proposing to make amendments to that program that would do the following. It would bring forward an additional $200,000 in funding from the public infrastructure / TBD account into the Home Safe and Repair program, and $100,000 into the lateral sewer connections, again from the public infrastructure TBD account. That would provide for a cumulative funding amount in the Home Safe and Repair program of $600,000 and a cumulative amount in the lateral sewer connections program of $300,000. And then following that, there's some data outlining the current status of those projects, the number of applications that have been received, the number of applications that have been processed, and the number of applications that are pending for future action. And that reflects the scope of the budget amendment that we have before you this evening for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. So now I'll take it and open up for public comment on all those items. 3 minutes. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Melinda Tunner, Palmetto Hall. Your process allows for budget amendments, and that was something I didn't have in my toolkit in my professional career, and I can think of a few times when I would have liked that. But I can understand if they're timing related, moving from one fiscal year to another, or you're approving new spending from some of your fund balances, like the land purchases. First, from a procedural perspective, I don't understand why this doesn't go through the Finance and Administrative Committee first. Second, I just have a couple of questions. On the beach parking allocation, there's a request to move unspent planned operating dollars from fiscal year 2023 to 2024 totaling $308,000. When I see operational expenses, that means to me it would be the ongoing cost of running the program. And my question is, wouldn't you have already planned operational expenses in fiscal year 2024? And if so, why do you need to add more operating dollars? Second, in regard to the CIP carryover, the materials describe this as moving forward unspent funds from fiscal year 2023 to 2024. And my question is, what is meant by unspent funds? Is this for specific projects that you still intend to do and timing is in the new fiscal year? I understand that. But do you also carry over funds if you spend less than you planned on a specific project or in a general improvement category? My feeling is any savings should be booked. Thank you for the opportunity to provide feedback.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Yes, sir.
Game of Monopoly and funny money and big government. Gruber found guilty of 3 ethics violations. He should be fired. First, the budget and expenditures on the agenda, including all year-end audits, are fraudulent. They just show the numbers our crooked managers, CPA, and lawyers want you to see. And fact is, no one on this council is a CPA with the ability to ensure they're accurate. This is why taxpayers should force this council, who works for us, to hire an outside expert town CPA to examine all the budgets, the illegal expenditures, to assure all the financial controls are in place and perform a forensic audit. This is the only way to fully identify all waste and illegal use of our tax funds and more severe crimes. I predict, sad to say, prison once a forensic audit is complete, and I recommend a firm from Charleston that's made up of former FBI agents. I've used them and they've done a great job. Millions of our aid tax and hospitality funds have disappeared and unaccounted for. None of you have seen it. None of you. You were all elected to approve, spend, and guard our tax money like your own family's money, not vote in favor to allow our town employees and lawyers to rob us blind and control all of us, control all of you like mindless puppets. How dare you all vote to allow the ongoing theft of millions of our tax money, our hard-earned money, and many state and federal laws to be broken. You should all be liable. You should be ashamed of yourself, Mr. Perry. Lawyer Gruber found guilty again of 3 ethics violations. Lawyer Coltrane, Alfred Finger, drafted fraudulent contracts. Orlando illegally used and issued tax funds while he worked in Bluffton with crooked Mayor Solka. CPA Troyer, fraudulent budgets and audits, only hides the numbers at from the chamber and overcharged legal fees. Again, Mr. Perry committed criminal fraud for his friend Bill Miles, saying he saw a counting of millions. You're a liar, Mr. Perry. You need to be removed. Lawyer Alfred Kim Likens, others committed criminal violations of state and federal banking laws. The entire council voted to illegally fund millions to Bill Miles in this chamber. They knew it was illegal, and they still voted for it. It's so bad that I don't even think God can help save us.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan. Other comments from the public? All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the dais. We have a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve an ordinance to amend the Town of Hilton Head Island budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024, to provide for the budgeted appropriations of the prior year budget roll forwards and certain other appropriations and commitments and the expenditures of certain funds, to allocate the sources of revenue for the said funds, and to provide for the severability and an effective date. This is a first reading.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Alfred, thank you. All right, discussion from council.
Mayor, may I ask for a friendly amendment to that motion? Yes. Which would be the opportunity to vote for, to pull from the motion, the CCDC and Habitat for Humanity funding to be voted on separately.
Is there a second to that motion? Seeing none, motion fails.
I wonder what happened.
Other discussion from council?
Oh, yeah, plenty. Yes, sir. Because I thought we were going to have an opportunity to speak to this separately and not part of the bigger package.
Actually, absolutely. I'd like to discuss each one individually. That's not, yes, absolutely.
Well, that's what I asked for.
Well, I'm sorry. We didn't need an amendment to do that, but we should be able to.
Well,
we're
because
having a
we were
discussion
moving
now,
quite
but-
quickly, I need to have
Yeah.
something to be able to base
No,
my
I'm
request
sorry.
on.
I would like to discuss each one individually and go through them.
That would be great.
And get a yay, nay, so we go down the line. So as you presented them, beach parking, LMO, hospitality, land purchase, CIP carry forward, American Rescue Plan, state funding for Habitat and CCDC. So let's go ahead and start off with the beach parking fund carry forward. Just head nods for the purpose of discussion. Any adjustments? LMO rewrite carry forward? Any discussions?
The understanding is that's the $700,000 is the contract, and for the consultants who are helping the staff with the LMO rewrite, and that will be the full package.
Yes,
No
ma'am.
additional work will be required.
So if I could just take a brief opportunity to speak to that, and then I'll hopefully answer, I think, some citizen questions that were raised. The roll forwards that have been identified are all for specific related budgeted line items or projects. And so those are typically things that are already underway or are not completed within a certain period of time, and therefore we'd look to carry those funds over from one budget year to the next. Typically, once a project has been completed, if there are any unspent remaining funds within that budget line item, at the end of the year, they would roll to the town's reserve fund.
And if I could just jump in, I think it's really important because we heard a good question. 2 examples, the PCI. We anticipated being live with the PCI, right? The beach parking at this point with a revenue stream.
Yes, sir.
At this point, that remains with town council and committee. The Community Service Public Safety Committee has been working with Josh to determine of a rate, right? So they have, the CSPS committee has agreed to the ordinance. We have been discussing the rate. We have been finding as much information as we can on rate. Unless and until that moves forward. And so we anticipated a positive revenue stream this fiscal year, but since it's not there, we have gone back in last year's budget and moved forward already approved funds. Ditto with the land management ordinance. Sean and team, Missy and team bid out the land management ordinance. We did not receive a lot of bids. That project was lagging. It took us about 6 more months than anticipated to really get it going. We anticipated being a lot further along and that we would have burnt through or used the money, I should say, used the money in last fiscal year budget, but we didn't. And so we'd have a live project and we didn't plan in this budget accordingly. We thought we'd spend it in last fiscal year. So message heard, those are those 2 projects only. This isn't typical of moving forward money of this nature, but these 2 projects are taking us some time to do it right.
Okay. RBC sponsorship, any questions, discussion? Land purchase allocation to CIP.
May I ask that we scroll back up so that I can see it in front of me and not have to rely on my memory? Sorry.
Oh, that's good.
Thank you.
All right, so now CIP carry forward. Any questions there? Discussion? Okay, American Rescue Plan. Yes.
So under the American Rescue Plan, these were a set amount of dollars with a one-time allocation and projects that were, monies were being designated to. We're now adding additional monies to the Home Safe Repair Program and Lateral Sewer Connections Program. And we're doing that because, just by way of explanation, we're doing that because as those applications for assistance came in, when they were completed with the dollars that we had, these are still ARPA dollars, but we're shifting them into these categories because we discovered that there's just a handful of ones that would be left on the table. So in fairness to that full body of applications, we're now using additional dollars from the original ARPA funds to satisfy that. Okay, I just want to make sure that that's clear for everyone to understand, that we're still within that original understanding of how we were using ARPA funds.
Isn't
Couldn't have
there
said it better.
a timetable on that they have to be spent by?
No,
Or
because,
has that changed?
so because this was a replacement of lost revenue, it's essentially considered within our general fund, but it is separate and apart, and we treat it separately because it was federal grant funding.
Okay.
And that essentially removed that time restriction you're referring to.
Yep, got it. All right, any other discussion on American Rescue?
That's a great use of those funds.
Okay. Pardon?
Just make sure, I'm not quite sure. I understand that we're trying to get clarity on the use of these funds and the applications that are currently in the queue. Because I heard something that Councilman Rebecca said as far as a handful of applications that are left. But it's my understanding that we have not stopped applications from coming in, that there could be additional applications that come to us. Is that correct?
John, is a head nod, the application is still open, correct? Yes.
All right. So there could be further demand. Yes. Okay, thank you.
Well, that's a curious position to be in, because we're taking applications for monies that we don't have available to help service. And so that's a different discussion. But for this purpose, I'm satisfied with what we have, but I would like an explanation at some point later as to why we have additional applications come in when we know we don't have money.
And similar to what we're doing tonight, any additional changes to the spending plan will be brought back before council for consideration and discussion.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion there? All right, Habitat for Humanity.
So I would like to, again, reiterate, and I'm happy to see that, Brenda, you're here tonight, that it is my belief, and I haven't been corrected since I said it, so I'm going to stand by it, that what Habitat has the most use for is land. And we have, as we saw, as we went through this, at least a piece of land that the town has purchased that might be very appropriate to assist Habitat in providing the homes under home ownership that they do. And I fully support that. If we're not going to go in that direction, and we are instead going to provide cash for Habitat for Humanity to go out and find land and staff time, which is incredibly valuable and we don't have a dollar amount for, to assist in that endeavor. This $500,000 doesn't really represent what it is that the town is offering to Habitat. And I think this is an unfair position to put any of us to vote in under, and the community, the residents, to understand what it is that we're spending their money on. I'd also like to ask, this is under ATAX money, and I'm still not clear, I think I've asked the question, but I will admit I'm still clear how we are using ATAX money from last year, prior to Act 57, on housing. If you can help me out,
Absolutely.
I would love to understand better.
So what Act 57 did is it made it permissible for local governments to utilize ATAX funds as a tourism-related expenditure. The act itself is silent to any time period in which the funds were collected. It just lists it as a permissible expenditure. And so because of that, if funds are available, they can be spent in furtherance of that upon the adoption of the appropriate prerequisite housing action or housing study.
Analysis.
Thank you.
Impact analysis,
Housing
yes.
impact analysis and amendments to the comprehensive plan. And because we're also mid-budget cycle, a budget amendment to provide for that funding.
Right, and so we haven't adopted an amendment to the comprehensive plan as of yet. Correct?
We've not, no. It's, I think it was on for, well, you just did. So you had second reading tonight.
So the analysis and the comprehensive plan was all wrapped into
Yes,
one.
ma'am.
I'm sorry, I was so focused on the housing analysis that, so we adopted that as well. I don't believe the honest intent of Act 57 was to be so open and broad as to have no year defined. I think the assumption certainly should be, and the intent was that it would be moving forward once the process had been put into place. So the look back, in my opinion, is inappropriate. So I'm going to stand by my original position that the best way to help an organization that works with land is to give them or to discuss with them that opportunity for them. If we are going to, which is, in not separating these into separate votes, is going to make it difficult for me because I'm going to vote no in all of these. And I don't want to, because as you know, there are many things in here that are absolutely things that we should vote on and move forward. But giving myself space, I would never approve $500,000. I would approve maybe some lesser amount, but I'd also like to know what the time allocation from staff and the dollar value of that is, so that we're all understanding how much money we're putting out into the community, and not just something on paper that does not give you the entire picture. So those are my comments, and I'm sad to have to make them. And I'm sad that I can't vote on things separately. And this is not the best way for us to run this particular agenda item. I wouldn't have done it this way.
Okay. Other comments? CCDC.
Yep, you can look right at me. That's perfectly fine too, because a lot of the comments that I just made also fit right into that. I do not, and then, so I won't duplicate those comments. You can add those to the CCDC list as well. I think we have some outstanding questions. I believe it was brought up by comments earlier. Where are we on the legal position from the IRS, I believe, on the 5013C?
So when town council approved entering into a memorandum of understanding, it conditioned entering into that memorandum of understanding on two items when it adopted it. One being that they would be able, when I say they, one being that the Coastal Community Development Corporation would be able to provide documentation evidencing that the receipt of those funds would not impair or eliminate their 501c3 taxable status. The second was that then the execution of the program would not cause any particular building or community to lose its insurability or ability for finance. And I apologize, I don't remember the specific terminology, but it was... Thank you. So because the approval of the memorandum was conditioned upon both of those, we've included those in the memorandum of understanding as express conditions. And so I understand the Coastal Community Development Corporation is working with legal counsel to prepare the documentation to respond to that and to demonstrate to the town that both of those would be satisfied through implementation of the program.
So then the town, Hilton Head Island itself, has not taken the initiative to request a legal determination from the IRS or from the Attorney General or for, I don't know, whoever you might ask? We haven't done that?
We've made that a condition of the MOU, that in order for us to move forward with it in its implementation, they have to provide us sufficient documentation showing that the conditions set forth by council have been met.
And so we're voting to approve monies for an MOU that we don't know is going to be able to be upheld. Does this not seem out of place to anyone but me?
Comment on that?
No, Mr. Alfred's got a comment. He's...
With respect to the 501c3 question, my understanding is that the concern arose on the dais at the time. There was a request to amend the MOU to permit preferential loan grants. So I have discussed with several members of the CCC leadership. Number one, they already have a 501c3 determination from the IRS. Number two, there are no at the present time, there are no preferential loans, i.e. loans going to somebody who's related to the insiders, to the leadership. None have been made. And number one, they have their 501c3. So the stance of the issue is, will they engage at some point in the future in making a loan to somebody that they shouldn't make one to? They are quite aware of the issue. I have been advised by the leadership of CCDC that they have consulted their legal counsel. And if a opportunity for a preferential loan that might skirt on the question of making it to somebody who is an insider, they will check with their legal counsel before anything happens. So we don't have a problem of any kind right now. And my understanding is that under the MOU, if they desire to make a preferential loan, the town has to participate in approving that. Is that correct? So this is at best, a potential future problem. It is not a matter of concern right now. And we will have an opportunity to make sure, to the extent that we can, that there will be no violation of granting preferential treatment that would impact 501c3 status.
Well, I understand your comments, Steve, and I appreciate them and respect them. The issue isn't, this issue actually is providing tax dollars, no matter how you slice them, tax dollars, as an opportunity, and then counting on a report, in a conversation, an agreement after the fact. That is literally putting the cart before the horse. So, and I humbly and respectfully request that the town do the town's job of ensuring that we are spending taxpayer money properly, and request that legal analysis of where it stands. First of all, those one-to-one loans should never have been incorporated into the MOU. They just should not. That is selecting winners over losers and putting everybody in a precarious situation. It shouldn't have been part of the MOU. The fact that it was insisted that it be included in the MOU tells me far more than we need to know. And so this is a problem, and it needs to be pulled out. It's not ready. I have quite a few other points to make. If we're not going to pull it out, I'll go ahead and make them. But I think based on that reason alone, we cannot sit here as a body, a fiduciarily responsible body, to all of these folks on this island, and put this in place until all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed, all the answers are before us, and we can truthfully and honestly look at each one of them and raise our hand to vote for this. So let me know if we're pulling it out. If we're not, I'll go on so that on the record, when this all comes back and there are people out there who are going to move forward, I'm on the record as having made perfectly clear that this is not appropriate. And so let me know, Mayor, how you feel about that.
Well, I think that council has spoken in not separating it out, so it is part of the entire package.
I'd rather listen to my mayor, right? Our leader. I would really like our mayor to make a stance on this.
So I do not disagree with you that it needs to be fully vetted and should have been fully vetted, and we should have had that information from a legal review to be able to make the proper decision. Why we did not, I cannot answer that question.
Can I ask why it's on the agenda?
Yeah. Mr. Mayor. Sure. Can I ask Mr. Gruber to answer a question for us? Does the constructed MOU have a drawdown verbiage as far as the monies being allocated to?
It does, and that was a prior condition of council that was included as well. The comment that I would make is the action that was taken by council was to approve entering into a memorandum of understanding so long as doing so did not impact the organization's 501c3 status. And so we will make sure that as it goes forward, that is satisfied as a condition of the agreement based upon the express conditions set forth by council. Similarly, the impact to communities and the insurability, financeability status. Those are both included as express conditions of the memorandum based upon the instructions received from town council.
Mr. Mayor, I call the question.
Well, I think that's an unfair position to take, Councilwoman Bryson, as we are in the middle of a discussion. I know you've made up your mind and you're not listening to other debate points, but there are lots of people who I'm responsible to. In fact, I'll say at this point, close to 40,000, because I don't think there's a resident on this island who is going to be satisfied with us for calling the question without a debate.
Mr. Mayor, just point of order. We are taking up an item on our agenda that relates to a budget amendment, not the MOU that was previously adopted, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
That is correct. It is the funding of that. So I would like to say that I did have conversations with others, legal, as Mr. Alford did, in regards to the questions that Mr. Arundel had brought forward in one of the previous meetings. And he was referring to, and pardon me, I don't understand the legalese of it, but there is two different aspects where it could be looked at where it is not providing any favoritism or any undue additional benefits to a private sector. Theoretically, all nonprofits have benefits to the private sector and to their members. So it was explained to me. I asked for a copy of the documentation. I did not receive it. I was satisfied with the explanation I was given. Now, with that said, I stand on my ground that I have an issue of giving the CCDC $600,000 for 20% of a down payment on a property. And that has not changed. And I would like to see those funds go further. Again, Mr. Brown, to your point, that goes back to the MOU, not to the conversation of the funds at hand. I would like to see, here's what I think is going to happen. I think it's going to pass. But I want to make certain that we do an exceptional job in monitoring and analyzing it over the next 12 months.
That's a mistake, and I respect you so highly, but I know.
You missed my first comment.
I heard everything you said, and I respect you tremendously, and honestly, I want you to be the very best mayor we've ever had, quite honestly. That is my goal.
Thank you.
And I'm going to help you by saying what I did, that we are inappropriately providing money to an organization whose affiliated agency, quite honestly, is in question as far as I'm concerned, because we have an affiliated agency process which requires, and I know we've had this debate that it's a suggestion, but honestly, there's a form that requires that you submit 2 years of financials to be able to go through the affiliated agency process and be vetted. And this agency cannot provide those. And I just would like to refer back to why this is important, because other members, whether they'll admit it here tonight or not, actually agree with that. Because at the Finance and Administration meeting, when we were going through the full packet of affiliated agency grant applications and allotment of monies, one did not get funding because they were a startup, just like CCDC, and they do not have any track record to be able to satisfy that requirement of the affiliated agency program. And that was stated on the record by the chair. Not by the chair, excuse me, I didn't mean that, Alex, by one of the committee members of the Finance and Administrative meeting. So if it's good for one, it's got to be good for the other. So it'll be interesting to hear how that vote. I want to know something else. If the town hasn't done what I believe the town should have done, instead of just asking all of our attorney friends and coming to conclusions ourselves, because we are not attorneys nor are we CPAs.
Some of us.
Well, that's true. We do have 3 attorneys. I will bite my tongue and apologize to them on that. I do. But have we notified? Have we done the proper notification and transparency to the stated, and I believe there's others, but the stated communities that are going to be directly targeted by the CCDC, so that all of the HOAs and the residents in those communities are fully aware of what is about to happen in their neighborhoods with regard to the purchasing of homes, and how many people might be living in those homes, the number of cars they might have with them, the fact that there's a 99-year covenant that restricts so many things that people are interested in when they own a home. Have we notified? Have we done the right job? Have we notified minimally those communities? What we should do, notify the entire town through an apps and through a process through our communication and marketing director, who posts things every single day that we all spend time reading and we're informed about. Have we taken that as a step to make sure that everyone knows what's happening in their communities? Because I've heard lots of conversation. Some communities, in fact, being promised, look, your community is only going to have so many, and we will promise you that they will be an AMI of 80 to 120%. Okay, for that community, they can sit back and they can kind of see that and see how it fits in. Does that mean then that those lower AMI necessary housing purchases for rental are going to be distributed in other communities who haven't had those conversations? And what about them? This just does not have the detail that it needs to be implemented so that everyone is aware, everyone has made a decision. We've heard tonight communities who want to have the opportunity to say no, and they should, as well as these other communities should have the opportunity to be noticed, have a discussion, and to say, no, not in my community. That's not exactly how we want our HOA or our neighborhood to work.
Ms. Becker, with all due respect, I think we understand unequivocally your position, and you've stated it very, very eloquently. I would like to call the question at this time.
And Mr. Ames, being the person who voted no.
Town Attorney, I'd ask for a ruling on the question having been called twice now.
I need to be on the record for this because this is a big mistake, and everyone who listens or knows about this needs to know where I stand and the reasons why I stand where I stand. Make whatever decision what you want.
Called for a vote.
Pardon?
Question has been called. That is
Question has been called for a vote.
priority.
Pardon? Okay. The question has been called for the vote. Ms. Becker, I understand. But when the rules are the rules.
They don't fit. The rules are the rules, then the affiliated agency isn't being met. We don't have the information.
The call for the vote has been made. We've got to follow. All those in favor, please signify. For yes, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, signify.
I think we should have a roll call vote, if we can, please.
We already have.
You let her do her presentation, then we got to respond.
The vote has been made, the call has been made. We need to move on to the next agenda item.
Mayor, may I ask for a roll call vote on that one so that everyone is on the record? Please.
Mr. Brown?
I already voted yes.
Ms. Bryson?
Yes, again.
Mr. Ames?
Yes?
Perry? Mayor Perry?
I am voting no because of my feeling on the CDC and the funding there. I don't think that's appropriate.
Becker?
I support everything else.
No.
Mr. Alfred?
Yes.
Mr. Stanford?
Yes.
It's 5-2.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Next on the agenda, we have Mr. Josh Gruber again to present first reading of consideration of an ordinance of the town of Hilton Head Island authorizing the execution of an easement encumbering property to be owned by the town of Hilton Head Island. This was authorized by town council at its March 5th meeting.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor, members of council. At that meeting, town council took action to authorize the acquisition of property located on Marshland Road. It does not have a situs address, but the property identification number is listed in your backup materials today. As a condition of moving forward with acquiring that property, the landowner who is selling it is going to need access to his property, which he will retain ownership of, which is at the rear of this property. So as part of the transaction that's been arranged by the town attorney, the town would acquire the property and then give an easement for access and utilities to Mr. Herbert Ford, who is the landowner that the town is purchasing the property from.
Okay. Any discussion from the public? Seeing none, we have a motion.
Yes, I move to approve an ordinance of the town of Hilton Head Island authorizing the execution of an easement encumbering property to be owned by the town of Hilton Head Island, identified as PIN number R51000004600000 under the authority of South Carolina Code 5-7-40 and 2-7-20 Municipal Code of the Town of Hilton Head Island, and providing for severability and effective date. This is a first reading.
Have a second.
Second, and applaud his reading of numbers.
You? Any discussion from council? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mr. Ames, a second by Mr. Alfred, to approve the consideration of an ordinance of the town of Hilton Head on authorizing the execution of an easement encumbering property to be owned by the town of Hilton Head Island, identified as that PIN number so referenced before, under the authority of South Carolina Code 5-70-40 and 2-70-20. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. So moved, 7-0. Next, Mr. Orlando, we have a need to go into executive session.
We do, Mayor. As shown on your agenda, item 10, A and B, executive session items.
I move that we go into executive session for the reasons cited by the town manager.
Second.
We have a first and a second. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. So moved, 7-0. Out.
I have two motions. The first is a motion to remove the Housing Action Committee member Candace Birkenauer for absences without prior notice.
Second.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Ames made the motion, Ms. Bryson seconded it. The Housing Action Committee, all those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. So moved, 7-0.
I have a second motion to approve the nominations of Janet Fatano, for a term ending June 30th, 2026. Dennis Crawford for a term ending June 30th, 2025. And Katie Varon for a term ending June 30th, 2026, as members of the Housing Action Committee.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, we have a first by Mr. Ames, second by Ms. Bryson, to approve the three individuals as stated to the Housing Action Committee. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed? That'd be 6-1. All right. Any other business?
Move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Adjourned.